Good morning, 5:14 a.m. and we're about to get started. Day 450. Isn't that something? There's a poll over in the chat, by the way, so if you're interested in, letting me know where you're at, what kind of fitness journey you're on, I would be very grateful for you to share that with me. And I just realized I forgot to put on my heart rate monitor because that is a new thing now again, now that we have the heart rate monitor once more. All right, connected. So many cables for a simple workout. There we go. All right. It is in place. I bought a new one because the old one stopped working. So let's see how much we're going to get out of this one. We have it here. Anyway, I'm back. And we are about to get started. Day 450. Friends, thanks for dropping by. And I hope you're doing well wherever you are in the world. My name is Toby. I am 40 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep, minding what I eat, growing up to do some strength training, conditioning training, mobility training, spending time with people I love and care about, doing things that I enjoy, and generally trying to live a stress-free life. So hey, if there is anything in that list that sounds interesting or appealing or you want to talk about, we can discuss that during the stream. I stream almost every day because this is my workout time. This is that 1 hour that I have. I put up shorts, I put up long forms, I put up posts. If you want to be part of the community, we can chat and have a conversation there. And we talk about health and fitness, and specifically health and fitness in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, because I am 41. So that's where my interests lie, and also specifically health and fitness geared towards living a long and healthy and active and self-sufficient life, because that's what I am currently working on, probably will be working on for the rest of my life. This is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I would like to feel fit, capable, and competent for whatever life is going to throw at me. So the reason why I think that's important is twofold. First, it's clear that we're getting older with all of medical advances, societal advances, technological advances. We are getting older. Emmett Emmons. Hello, Emmett. Thanks for dropping by and saying hi. And I hope you're doing well where you are in the world. I appreciate you dropping by and say hello. It's 5:15 a.m. where I am in the morning, just doing my opening spiel, and we're going to get started with the training. We're all going to get older. I think for me the outlook is, a definite 80, barring any tragedy or anything that might go wrong with my health genetically. You might get unlucky, you don't know. But otherwise 85 is reasonable to expect. And with those extra years we've gotten, we haven't necessarily gotten more healthy years. In other words, we're living longer, but we're not living well, especially those last 5, 6, 7 years of our life. A lot of medication, a lot of care needed, a lot of dependency, maybe surgery. In other words, it is not going to be a situation I would love to be in. And a large part of that discomfort and disease can be prevented through certain lifestyle choices. We'll talk a bit more about that later. Second thing is, two kids, they are growing up, and I would like to be an active part of their life. I would like to be a role model for them as they grow up, and I think it helps if I am physically fit and capable to fulfill that role as a father and a husband, as a man in their lives. So that's why we're here every day. Newsy, hi Newsy, thanks for dropping by, saying hello. I hope you're doing well where you are in the world, and I hope you're having either a good end of the day or start of the day. For me, it's the start of the day. It's 5:15 a.m. here in Amsterdam. That being said, every health fitness journey is very personal. We have the poll. I'm sure we'll get different answers in the poll. Doesn't matter what your goal is. What matters is that we work on it consistently, that we use good technique, use planning and programming, and do things that really work rather than follow fads and spend money on crazy things that people try to sell us online. And in the end, it all comes down to the basics every time. Are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? And are you moving well? And that's also what we'll predominantly talk about in this program and in this stream. Remember that we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. It's the person we are today is going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. So a bit of kindness is going to go a long way. And friend, the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So with my new heart rate monitor on, I'm going to hit the timer, and we are going to get started. And we're just going to start off very simply moving, getting stronger. Just checking in with the body to make sure that we are moving well, that we are getting ready for the output we want to deliver. Also checking in always with neck. You know, that seems to be moving all right. I'm just going to do a couple of air squats, a couple of straight push-ups. Get the heart pumping slightly. Make sure we are moving well before we get started, and understand any limitations or challenges in the chain this morning. All right. Some deadlifts as a warm up. This is a 20 kilo, and I have a 24 there as well. We're going to be doing different things. Making sure we're hitting that heavy mark today. The only thing that isn't heavy is any overhead work, because we're trying to avoid injury. We're trying to build that strong shoulder. So let's just very quickly talk about some long-term health implications to understand what it is that we are actually working with and against. See, when we try to get fit and healthy, it's important to understand our starting point and where we want to take this. To give you a good idea, my goal is quite singular when it comes to exercise. That is to show up every day of the week for about 30 minutes, and to, in those 30 minutes, show up and do some good, hard physical work, whether that's conditioning or mobility or strength. And my belief is that if I do that every day for exercise, I'm covering more or less the basics. All right, we're going to do 10 times 10 swings with a 20. Why have I gone down from 10 times 16 to 10 times 10? I am worried about my technique. We need to work on the power development here. Today's a heavy day. So we're doing 10 times 10. We're going to do 10 times 5 with the 24 later as well to work on that extra power. Maybe even 10 times 3. This is still part of the warm-up and conditioning part. All right. So starting point, baseline, right? Where do we start? Well, we have some things to consider to frame this conversation. One of those things is national guidelines. Like your country will probably have them just like mine. It's where you have a set of guidelines that tell you whether you should move 3 times, 6 times a week, how long you should move and what they describe in different intensities. Third set of 10. All right. I think those guidelines are great if you are already relatively healthy compared to the average, and relatively active compared to the average. You're probably meeting those guidelines quite easily. The thing is, if you never move throughout the week at a moderate intensity, fourth set, and this would be considered a moderate intensity exercise at the moment because the heart rate is rising. Fourth set, fifth incoming. You have a lot more ground to cover to become fit and healthy before that guideline actually maybe has the desired effect. If you are already optimizing for health and fitness, you understand that that guideline is literally the bare minimum fifth set that you need to do. And you know that if that was all you did, you would lose or regress some of the health and fitness markers that you've established. So those guidelines are the bare minimum and probably a good idea to work towards if you've never been active, but they're not very helpful if you are quite active. Sixth set. Let's go. Okay, seventh set incoming. So, what does this mean as a frame of reference? Health fitness is quite personal. Our baselines are all different, regardless of the minimum guidelines, which give you a good indication of where you are in terms of your investment in health and fitness. Seventh set. We need a slightly more tailored approach. But there's more that we're working with and against. Seventh set. Going into that eighth set. Right now we have some other work cut out for us. Rows, squats, push-ups, overhead presses. So listen, in my country, right? 33% of teenagers move sufficiently. That's 1/3, right? And that number has been declining for many years. Ninth set coming up. So that means that for my generation, between 60, 50% of us did not learn how to move and be active during childhood, during our teenage years. Mindset. And just like any other activity, health and fitness is a set of behaviors. 3. Tenth set coming up is a set of behaviors that we would need to acquire at a certain point in our life to set that baseline. And if we acquire this set of behaviors as teenagers, as children, of having numerous active moments throughout the week, more likely to go on to lead a moderately active lifestyle. So right now, if you're watching this and you're in your 20s, you'd ask yourself, do you belong to the group that was active throughout the week? Tenth set. Celebrate. Good to have had this here. Let's take a minute to catch our breath. We're going to be doing some lifting and squatting. Mixed with some rows. I think it's going to be a good alternation here. So, on top of that, you can see that only about 72% exercises weekly, right? Or does a sport weekly once, more than once. So that leaves 28%, around 300,000 people who are growing up not engaged in sports, and there could be many reasons for this. But as a trend in society, you can simply say that if a portion of those 300,000 people, let's say half, comes to sport later on in life, do a left row and a right row. That still leaves 150,000 people in this generation who are set up for Movement poverty is the translation from the term we use here. And that movement poverty leads to all kinds of problems downstream. All right? So it's important to just keep in mind that there's a relationship between how much we move early on in life and how much we will move later on in life. And we're framing this conversation this way because we understand where the current patterns and behaviors in our life come from. It's 24 kilo, by the way, in case you're wondering what we're lifting at the moment. This is the heaviest I have. Like I said, doing heavy, lower repetition ranges than on other days. All right, so we have these two challenges. If such a large number of people are not meeting the basic movement thresholds, right? Anywhere between 700 and 300,000 people early on in life. They bring that into their 20s, which is usually a time in our life where we are maybe working, maybe studying, but definitely full of energy, partying, not taking as good care of our health as maybe we should. We set up a poor baseline for when we hit our 30s, mid-30s, late 30s going into our 40s for the health outcomes in the long term. Next time I'll come back with the numbers on people in showing signs of developing certain chronic diseases such as prediabetes, diabetes type 2. And we'll talk about how lifestyle changes actually help prevent a lifetime of dependency on medication. But we'll need to understand how we get there first. And for diabetes type 2, it's very clear that in some cases it happens, and we don't know why. In a part of the cases, it is very clear that lifestyle plays a big part in the development of the environment, the physical environment, the physical chemical environment that enables the development of that disease. And I think if you could, you probably would want to prevent developing insulin resistance and little things can already help a lot in that sense. So framing, right? We're here to try to prevent the development of certain conditions, physical sickness, disease. At the same time, we're trying to develop the habits and routines that'll keep us strong and fit and self-sufficient throughout our life, right? Because that way we can probably stay off medication longer, we can take care of ourselves longer, and we can keep doing the things that we want to do. And do not forget that socializing and being an active part of a community are tremendous factors in long-term health and fitness development. If we want to be able to contribute and to a community, participate to a community, could be the street, could be a sports club, could be a school, could be a charity, could be a volunteer circle at work. You'll see that we actually need our physical health to be able to participate in those communities as a whole. Again, that's a consequence of our lifestyle choices, barring any other conditions, genetics, tragedy, sheerly being unlucky, right? And there are some physical facts to help you understand this impact of habits early on in life. Okay, so let's talk about those. So it's a fact of life that beyond 30, a lot of us won't ever sprint again. But more importantly, which is a loss, because loss of speed is one of the things that we will all have to contend with as we age. The last one to go is strength. So speed, volume, strength when it comes to our muscles. All right. Our max aerobic capacity, so our ability to use oxygen to deliver output is going to decrease by about 1% over time. You might know the basic formula. Take 220, deduct your age. That's your max heart rate. Kind of the thing here, right? The stroke volume of your heart diminishes, and as it diminishes, it is less capable of providing oxygen blood flow through your vascular system, which also ages, gets stiffer, just like your heart as a muscle, and you start to lose that aerobic capacity. But there's hope, because when they take sedentary, basically unfit and unhealthy people in their 50s, and they look at their hearts and they see that their hearts are stiff and aged and their vascular system is stiff and aged, and they put them on a moderate exercise regime for 2 years. Within 2 years, the biological age of their heart, that stiffness, reverts to when they were 30, so 20 years younger. So imagine having the cardiovascular capacity of a person 20 years your junior, and still having to face the fact that over time you are going to have to own up to a decrease in that cardiovascular capacity. What that means, friend, is that after your 40s and 50s, you literally have to work harder to maintain the same aerobic capacity, all right? So if you want to stay capable and able, you are going to have to work a little bit harder every year to stay at that same level. And there's a lot you can do if you set a proper baseline for yourself. But you do have to understand how this works. So that's aerobic capacity. And there are different modalities to train for that. Let's talk about bone density. You know what I'm going to say, right? Bone density is going to steadily decrease as we age. So bone density after 30 is going to change. And here's the thing about bone density. And this is why framing is so important, because we need to talk about how our bone density becomes our bone density. And that has a lot to do with the first 20 years of life and the challenges and stresses that we choose to put upon our body, or that our parents choose to put upon our body. In those early tens, zeros and tens, stay stable till we're about 40, and then starts to decrease. So creating good bone density early on in life, and then keeping it stable and challenging it by putting our body under load and resistance training is a good example of how to do this. Okay. Might be a good example of how to do this. But again, the mindset is we want to build good bone density early on in life. We want to maintain and continue to develop that strain and stress on our body throughout adulthood, so that when we reach the point where deterioration is more or less inevitable, because that's the story here, we have a good baseline to deteriorate from and to maintain. Because you start at -10 and you have to build up to 0 to maintain it. It's a very different story than if you start at +10. And you are working to maintain that. Relatively straightforward, right? The third big one is muscle and strength, all right? So we start to lose muscle and strength after we're 50. We start to lose speed over the course of our 30s and 40s. Then we start to lose volume, as in keeping more muscle mass becomes harder and harder. And then we begin to lose strength. Now, thankfully, we can continue to build muscle throughout our life, continue to grow stronger throughout our life. But three things are absolutely imperative. We grow stronger when we sleep. It's an anabolic state. In other words, if we're not sleeping well, doesn't matter how hard you train, friends, you are not going to be able to build that muscle. We need to eat properly, specifically for muscle maintenance, muscle growth. We need to add 1.5 to 2 times our body weight in kilograms. In protein. So our protein synthesis diminishes over time as we age. Probably has something to do with the demise of our muscular volume and strength. So if we're not sleeping sufficiently and eating sufficiently, it doesn't matter how well we do the third thing. And we all know the third thing, training with progressive overload. Oh look, it's 6 a.m. We're doing good. This is proven to be a good workout. And we have some more time to kill together. Alright, so sleeping well, eating well, training well to build up and maintain that strength. See, it always comes back to these basics. And these basics are habits. So outside of the 30 minutes this morning, a bit longer, so you can tell we're doing a squatty day. All right. Despite the 30 minutes in a day. I know that that is not enough, so I try to find pockets of activity throughout the day, especially on the weekends. We like to be moving most of the day. Okay, especially on the weekends, so you can get a lot of hours of movement in, as well as finding moments throughout the day. All right, friend, finding moments throughout the day to move. On the way home, walking around the block extra. At the office, taking the stairs. In the office gym, I'll sneak in once a week and do those 10 pull-ups, 1 every minute. We'll bring it up to 2 every minute over time. Again, once a week. Find opportunities to lift something heavy and move it around, whatever the opportunity is going to be. All right, this is a 2 kilo because we're going to try something here. Need to keep that knockout strong. See, if I'm not able to do anything with an 8 kilo, we probably need to bring that down to a lighter weight and try to work out the technique. This is one that I would like to be able to do under load. Whew. All right. 10 times 3. For this one. That is a heavy weight. And you can see we're just having some fun here this morning. We're going to alternate. So I'm going to do left side, press, squat, light weight, swings, press, squat, with the weight, springs. And do that a couple of times. And then I'm going to go out and do some sprints. That's going to be a challenge and require a lot of work. But the fact that I'm able to get down into that squat with an arm overhead, I think is a good sign. All right. That is heavy. All right. So, you have a couple more minutes to go. Do we get the basics of long-term health and fitness, right? Deterioration is inevitable. The habits in childhood help define the habits in adulthood. The habits in childhood help define our physical capability in adulthood. And there are certain thresholds we hit where we're not growing stronger, but we're fighting deterioration. And we want to reach those thresholds well equipped, as in give ourselves a higher baseline to start deteriorating from and to maintain, to give ourselves an edge in our long-term health and fitness journey. That will grow over time. I'm not too worried about that right now. All right. So just keep those things in mind as you embark on your health and fitness journey, wherever you want to take it. And for anyone who's watching, my name is Toby. I am 41 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. So I do so by minding my sleep. I try to get between 7 and 9 hours. Most of the days I'll hit 7.5. Occasionally I'll drop below for a couple of days. Rarely do I make it up to 9. I try to mind what I eat, as in, I try to eat within my energy balance. Which is around 2,200 calories. I try to eat a lot of vegetables because there are a lot of good nutrients in vegetables that we want to try to get into our system. And I try to eat 120 to 150 grams of protein, which is about that 1.6 mark, 1.6 gram mark compared to my body weight, right? And over time that probably will need to increase. Fish oil, magnesium once or twice a week. But I do need to get a screening. My fish oil levels were good. Could improve slightly, but at the top range of the marker, which is positive. Oh, I wish left hand overhead felt as good as right hand overhead. So there is some motor skill on the dominant side that makes an exercise like this easier, and at the same time you just have to work on the left hand side. Final set of swings. Then I'm going outside for a run after a cup of coffee. All right, friends. So that brings us to the end of today's session. Indoors with kettlebell. Heavy, focused on strength. Monday's light conditioning. Friday's medium conditioning. Wednesday's strength. Full body. And you'll see how that's going to pay off over time. You can already see, probably, taken together with good sleep and minding my nutrition. I appreciate you dropping by, saying hi, watching. Remember, this is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. So if you're looking for advice to get a six-pack, to grow big muscles as a man, you want to talk about junk people use to grow bigger faster, doesn't happen on this channel. We talk about food, we talk about sleep, we talk about training, we talk about habits, we talk about being a father, being a man, life, career, finances, everything you need to set yourself up for success. So you know that if we're healthy, we will also have that riz, show those vibes to the world, all right? We're good, just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. This person we are today is going to get us to where we're going to be tomorrow. So a bit of kindness is going to go a long way, because there are enough people out there who want to put us down, all right? We lift ourselves up and each other up here in this community. And the only way to get anything done, friend, is by showing up and doing the work. And remember, subscribe.